Hello, and welcome to another jam-packed episode of My Favorite Conservative. I am Edward.
And I am Andrea, but I am not conservative.
You know?
No,
Okay.
but he is my favorite conservative.
Oh, thank you. All right, today we are going to do a recap of the Republican debate from this past week. However, I know a lot of people have kind of been oversaturated with it. We have a slight twist to our analysis because Andrea watched the debate and I was actually traveling and driving and I listened to the debate. So it's kind of a shade possibly of Nixon Kennedy.
Yes, for our younger listeners, then Vice President Richard Nixon debated Senator John Kennedy in the 1960 presidential election season. And it's so interesting because the people who watched the debate on television thought Kennedy won, mainly because Nixon was sweating like a pig and he just, he looked terrible. And the people who listened to the debate on the radio thought Nixon won because Kennedy's speech and that very, I don't know, Connecticut accent, I don't even know what you call
Massachusetts.
it. Yes, was a turnoff. And so visuals are very important. So we're going to give you that little flavor. Let's talk about who was on the debate stage. Somehow, former New Jersey Governor Christie made it at the last minute, I heard.
He did, yes.
Former UN Ambassador and former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. So now there are 4. It's like 10 little Indians, and we just keep whittling them down. Edward, tell us about the moderators.
It was Megan Kelly, who did an excellent job, I thought, FYI. Elizabeth Vargas and Ileana, sorry. She's one of the EJs on Megan's show, I believe, right?
Yes, but
Ileana Johnson. She's from News Nation, the people that actually hosted the debate, right?
Yes, and I would say overall that, and I think most people agree, if you've watched all 4 debates or listened to them, this was probably one of the best ones by far. The setup was very different. They let the candidates debate each other, but there was only 1 or 2 times where the moderators started to lose control, and they brought it right back, and they really did a good job. My only question is, why in the hell was Chris Cuomo doing the follow-up afterward on News Nation? Ew.
Yeah, News Nation's trying to be this middle-of-the-road network and have both sides on there, but really, Chris Cuomo, you couldn't find anybody on the left better than him. So,
All right, let's dive in. So what was different about this was each moderator had specific questions, but what they did was they would make a statement and then they would go to very specific candidates and sometimes leave other candidates out of that particular section completely. So Megan started off talking about electability, saying Trump is 50 points ahead in many polls. She went to Ron DeSantis first, saying that he had spent the most money to date, which is true, but had not closed the deal so far. And so she says to him, is it fair to say the voters are telling you not no, but not now? Would you like to talk about
that was a good question, the way she phrased it.
It was.
Yeah, not no, but not now.
Yes.
So the people like DeSantis. So, yeah, DeSantis went in. I'm sick of the polls, sick of Republicans who won't fight back, and you know how he beat up the woke, and he gave a lot of examples from Florida, what he's done, and I think did he go after Nikki Haley like right away?
He said she caves.
Yeah, she caves on the woke stuff, and he stands tough, and I will fight for you, and I will win.
Yes, yeah. You know, I think that debate, which we covered with Newsom, did him so much good.
Yeah, I thought that was the best debate that we've covered. I guess 5 of these now, but yeah. And I think if you get down to 2 people, it gets better.
But I think it really helped Ron DeSantis. It lit a fire under his ass because he came in fighting and solid. I mean, without a doubt. The next question, oh my gosh, it was awesome. So we're still in this section about electability. And Megan said to Nikki Haley, you left office with $100,000 in the bank. Now you're worth $8 million. Aren't you too tight with the banks and billionaires to win over the working class base? Now, keep in mind, she just got a whole bunch of endorsements from the Koch brothers, from all these other
BlackRock.
Yes, exactly. So she is flush with money. And so I loved that Megan asked this question. And Nikki started by saying, we'll take support from anybody. And I want you to say what your first thought was.
I just said, what the fuck? Really?
Wait,
from anybody?
Can you say that again?
No, I'm not. I shan't repeat it.
He almost never curses.
From anybody? Really? That's your bar?
Yeah, that was her bar.
Yeah.
It's interesting because she was a Tea Party candidate who became governor, and she rattled off her achievements. And honestly, it sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, 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 wah. And then she said, I don't ask their views. I tell them mine.
Yeah, right. And, to me, it sounded like, here's the typical politician, the establishment politician speech that I'm going to give when I'm asked why I take so much money from these pariahs, if you will, of the donor class.
I don't know if you could, if you noticed this listening, but watching, I do think she was taken aback by the question.
Yeah, I thought so too. One thing I did notice, and I mentioned it to you later, was her voice. It's actually not too bad just listening to her. Now, mind you, I think I was going off of like Hillary's voice as the gold standard.
That was your barometer.
Yeah. So yeah, she sounds definitely acceptable, not too nasally or anything like that. But yeah.
And the question to Vivek was how he has campaigned as a unifier, but he keeps switching up his views, and so there was a question about his authenticity. And then he just started attacking everybody.
Yeah. When Megan, the full question was something like, the first debate, you attacked everybody. The second debate, you were Mr. Nice Guy. Then the third debate, you were back to being
that's right.
Attacking people. What are you tonight?
Yeah, which Vivek is showing up tonight. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And he went into his speech of, not the broken politicians who are the puppets,
but he attacked
the puppet masters.
Oh, no, hold on. That's later. Oh, no. Oh, that's right. No, say that again. That was one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah, he said, he said, we need leadership from the outside, not the broken politicians who are the puppets of the puppet masters.
That was a great line. I gave him to him. It was a great line. But it was really interesting because he brought up Thomas Jefferson's age, 33, 30, something like that, when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Some audience members booed. The audience, and this was, we should have said we were at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa.
So it's about 45 minutes from us.
Yes, very close to us. And I was a little surprised how much this audience hated Vivek. They booed him a lot.
See, now that's a little bit of a difference from listening to viewing, because when I was listening to his responses, they didn't sound bad. Later on, when I saw the video of it, you could see the smart alecky kind of condescending looks he was giving the other candidates. So it kind of changed how it came out.
Yeah. It was interesting because it continued in this little spiral with Vivek, and Nikki Haley jumped in about not being bankrupt. And Ron DeSantis pushed back on Nikki Haley. So they were threatened by her because both DeSantis and Vivek were attacking Nikki Haley big time, but the audience was booing Vivek. And then I will say this was her best line of the night. And then she just kind of went downhill after this. She just said, when they all started coming after her, except for Christie, I love all the attention, fellas. Thank you for that. That was pretty funny. That was really, really funny. And then the last question in this section went to Christie. Megan asked him about his endorsement of Trump in 2016 and 2020, how he has now turned on Trump, and yet his approval rating with GOP voters is 25%. And she said, the party doesn't like you very much. Would you like to share Christie's answer?
Well, yeah, but what I noticed, he immediately says, Megan, we're 17 minutes into this debate. And he says this several times during the debate. We're 26 minutes into this debate. We're 37 minutes into, and it's like, to me, he was like the self-appointed hall monitor, and he was trying to pretend that he was a moderator and the enforcer also. And it was just,
but it was fun to have him there because we'll get to it, but he called a lot of shit out. He really did.
But he said, we're 17 minutes into the debate and we're acting as if the race is between the four of us. And
for our Harry Potter fans, he compared Trump to Voldemort. I loved it. If you're not a Harry Potter fan, you're not going to get it. But But he did point out that the others were too timid to speak out against Trump.
Yeah, well, just remember his entire campaign is built on just taking out Donald Trump in terms of that. That's the only reason he's in. Policies be damned.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Christie policy?
Yeah, good point. Well, we will get to one later.
Maybe.
Yes. And
Right.
apologies if I'm coughing, I'm getting over a cold. So, all right, then they switched it up. They went to Elizabeth Vargas, who I thought did a great job. And she basically, it was, Israel, what would you do? Yeah. And her main question was, would you send troops? That was the main question. Like
right.
she wanted a yes or no. And this was not a good moment for DeSantis.
No, it wasn't. He gave his typical canned, same speech that he always gives on it. He pointed out he's a veteran and they'll be held to pay if you hurt our troops. We stand with Israel, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
blah.
But Christie said he didn't answer your question. And my thought was
he was right.
Christie's right.
Yeah, it's one of those things where she was trying to get DeSantis to say he would send in troops.
Right.
And he's not going to say that. And I don't think anybody should say that.
Okay. I thought we had more than that. Yeah. And then she shifted Elizabeth Vargas to Hamas specifically and asked Vivek to clarify his position on Hamas because he had stated in the past, it's not an attack on America, it's an attack on Israel. Yeah. Personally, this is one of the things I like about Vivek. I like that he's not a warmonger. I like that he's not, what's the phrase they use in politics? Neocon or yeah. I like that. And DeSantis actually pushed back and said Americans were killed in the attack. So it's appropriate to work with Israel to bring terrorists to justice. But again, that's still not stating whether you would send troops or not.
No, it's not. It's kind of the Donald Trump, if you harm one hair on the head of an American, there's going to be hell to pay. And Trump actually backed that up. But.
Yes. And then shifted to Iran and went to Nikki Haley. I thought this was one of her, besides the other line earlier, this was a very good moment for her. She said Iran only responds to strength. And I thought she did a really good job of connecting the various policy issues, Iran, Russia, China, Israel, all of it. And she really stressed that they don't respond to sanctions. You have to go after their infrastructure. And I thought that was a good, solid moment from her.
Yeah, I thought Vivek's response was actually pretty good when he said foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. And, Nikki Haley was touting her credentials from the UN and whatnot. And her response, I thought, was typical of Nikki Haley. She would get us in a war in a hot minute.
That's not what she said.
No, but they only respond to strength. They don't respond to sanctions. Fine. But she is always touting that line.
I know.
How quickly do we go in?
This was one of the few times with the audience that Vivek was both booed and cheered.
Yeah.
Let's see. Christie lost his mind.
Yeah.
This was like I thought he was going to have a heart attack on stage. He started screaming at Vivek. I mean, and even in my comments, I wrote, "Wow, he's pissed." He called Vivek the most obnoxious blowhard in America.
Yeah, that's rich coming from him.
I know.
Yeah. Pot kettle. Hello.
And then he accused Vivek of insulting Nikki Haley's basic intelligence. And then this was such a weird moment. Christie defended Nikki Haley.
Yeah. And I could feel it on the radio listening that he's sticking up for her. And it's like, oh boy, here's a little bit of mansplaining. Don't worry, dear, I'll protect you. I'm Big Bad Christie.
And that's how it came off.
Yeah.
And, I agree with Megyn Kelly. She said later on her show, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, okay, this is your moment, Nikki. This is it.
Yeah.
You say, thank you very much, but I don't need you to defend me.
Yeah.
That was your moment to show that as a woman, you don't need to be defended by a man. And she looked very caught off guard again. Like she didn't know what to do. And this was the moment, and this was right before the first break, where she just sort of wilted a little bit physically on stage, kind of shoulders started to slump. And it was so interesting. Christie's defending her. She's not saying a word. DeSantis is silent as a mouse.
Smart
Vivek,
move.
and Vivek is still screaming at Christie. So it was just unbelievable. And the moderators really chastised Vivek because he would shut up. I will say, I don't think the moderators liked Vivek.
I agree.
And it
now,
showed.
on that part, watching on television, it's you know, when they talk over each other, you can at least see what they're kind of saying to each other. On the radio, it was just one big garbled mess.
I'm sure it was. Yeah.
It was just like, both of you shut up.
Yeah. And it was one of the few times the moderators had to pull it in.
Yeah.
And they were like, and we're going to break. So, all right. So we go to break, we come back, and they start talking about the southern border and immigration because it's one of the most pressing issues for Republican voters. And that was another good thing these moderators did. They focused on issues important to Republican voters because this is a Republican primary. So they went to DeSantis first, and how he had said in a previous debate that, you know, that he would shoot first if fentanyl was suspected.
Drug smugglers, yeah.
Yes. And the question was, how is that legal? Would you like to share his answer?
I think they thought they were going to trap him on something, but he said, you know, drug cartels are killing us.
Yeah.
The president has the right and the responsibility to fight back. He would make them be deemed as foreign terrorist organizations, which would give you the authority to order shooting, if you will. So,
and how would he pay for the wall? This was pretty clever.
Yeah. And he said he would, you know, finish or build the wall across the southern border, and he would use tax remittances, money that people are sending back home to their countries, and put a pretty hefty tax on it. And I thought that was a great response. The audience absolutely loved it.
They did. I thought it was a really strong answer. And I felt like he was really credible on it. Yeah. Then they went to Nikki Haley, who had promised to catch and deport, but she's not going to deport anybody who's paying taxes.
And as I'm listening, I'm like, oh God, Nikki, that is such a shitty answer because, you know, she didn't say what kind of taxes, right? She didn't say if people aren't paying income taxes, they're going to get deported. She's going to use that as an out.
How so?
In terms of if she's elected president and she's asked about her promise to deport people, she says, well, they're paying taxes. They're paying their local taxes to their sales taxes and whatnot. So unless you say they're not paying income taxes, and they can't pay income tax unless they're using a stolen Social Security card. So,
yeah.
And
then I want to jump to Vivek. They said something about, are his policies offering false hope? Now, he was very clear. He believes in using the military pretty much like everybody else. I don't think that was different. What I do like about him is he really talks about the mental health crisis we have in this country, and that you have to deal with the root cause. You know, I actually thought this was one of his best answers, that we're really deluding ourselves if we only deal with the demand side. And then he kind of went after China because, you know, most of fentanyl is made in China.
Oh, yeah. Guess where? Wuhan.
Yeah. And so he said, you know, you will not buy land in our country. You will not join our universities. I mean, so I thought this was a real strong moment for him. And unfortunately, I don't think the audience saw it for what it was.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Yeah. Never asked Christie about this issue. They moved on to economy and home ownership. And I'm just they went to Nikki Haley first, but let's jump to DeSantis because this was one of the most frustrating things. So they started with saying that inflation tops the worries of American voters and Biden adds $6 trillion to the national debt. Who shares the blame for inflation? And he said the borrowing, printing, and spending of money was the fault of both parties. That was strong out of the gate. And then he told a fucking story. Now, here's the thing. I love stories. I think you can take a story that is somewhat anecdotal and you can really use it as an example for the greater good or the bigger picture. But two things. One, the story has to work.
Mm-hmm.
Three things. Two, it can't be the same story you've told over and over and over.
Tell that to Joe Biden.
Three, you have to be a good storyteller. And if you're a good storyteller, you know how to tell a story that you may have told before, but you make it sound fresh every single time.
Yeah.
And as someone who's a writer and a storyteller, I really pride myself on that. And so I was, Edward was listening on the radio.
Yeah.
I was home. I was yelling at the TV going, stop. He's not a good storyteller. Stop telling stories. They don't work. It always comes off like a rehearsed, overly prepared stump speech. When he gets right to the point and then brings in his experience as governor is when he's great.
Yeah, I thought he actually made two really good points after that stupid speech. But he talked about open up domestic energy. That's the way you're going to cure this inflation. But also, I loved how he went after student loans. And he said, and this is a great idea,
It was
that universities, not the federal government, they should be the ones backing these loans. So they are responsible for you actually learning something so you can be a productive citizen and pay back your loans, or they will lose the money. Amen to that.
Yeah, I thought that was smart. Yeah. And then they went to Vivek, who has praised cryptocurrency and opposes regulation of cryptocurrency. And he didn't really answer the question. He I don't remember the exact question, but it was basically, aren't these at odds with each other kind of thing. And he just said things like our regulations need to catch up to the current moment, but he opposes regulation of cryptocurrency. And then he went into how he would reduce federal bureaucrats by 75%.
Yeah, to me, that's one of his stump speech portions there.
Yeah.
It sounds great and is like red meat to the base. That's not going to happen. Okay. 75%, really? I like maybe the idea of shoot really high, and if we get a 30% reduction, that would change our country forever. Yeah. Yay. So, and guess what? Christie was never asked about this issue.
He was not.
Thank God. Love you, Megan. Good job.
All right. So then they took another break and came back and talked about Trump, and that got, DeSantis, Christie yelling at each other. I think it was only the second time, and the moderators had to rein them back in, but we're not going to go deep into that section. We're going to go right into the next section, which was really interesting because it brought up a lot of things for me. Transgenderism. Yeah. So they actually went to Chris Christie first because he has said many times he does not favor a ban on trans medical treatments for minors, saying it's a parental issue. Now, I give him a lot of credit because he doesn't just, change with the wind, right? He has always stuck by that answer. Mm-hmm. Even though, by the way, Megyn Kelly did push back saying he had signed certain guidelines for schools when he was governor, and he accused Megyn Kelly of being a liar.
Yeah, and let me jump in here.
Yeah.
So that was fact checked afterward.
Yeah.
It turns out he actually signed this legislation at the end of his term.
Yes.
And it was put into action in the next administration, but he signed it. So he was lying.
Yes.
Absolutely lying.
He was lying.
Yes.
He had a good argument, I think, initially, because he was about Republicans believe in less government, not more. I trust parents. And again, he was very strong and consistent on this issue. But it made me really think about, is it okay for parents to allow their children to smoke? Is it okay for parents to allow their children to drink or do drugs? No, that is considered child abuse.
Yeah, both he and DeSantis and Ramaswamy crushed him on this because DeSantis said, as a parent, you do not have the right to mutilate your kids. Yes. That is child abuse.
Yes.
Correct? Yes.
And he pointed out, DeSantis, that, so many European countries have completely shut this down now for minors.
Yeah, the ones that the left always think we should be more like.
Yes. And you're right. Vivek came out strong.
And said, I love it flat out. It is a mental disorder.
Mental health
disorder. You do not cure a mental health disorder by agreeing with the mental health disorder.
Right. And he said there needed to be a minimum age to genital mutilation.
If you're an adult, cut off whatever body parts you want. Knock yourself out.
Absolutely. So anyway, it was, and then there was some bickering going on between Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, although she did pipe up. And again, at this point, she kind of faded into the background. But every now and then she would pipe up.
You could hear it on the radio
You
or
could?
not hear it. Yeah, that her answers it just seemed like she got weaker as the night went
She
on.
did.
Yeah.
She did. And she did say she would defend women's sports. So that's something, I guess. Then they had this question about faith and religion for Vivek. And again, I think it just kind of showed that the moderators could not stand him. But they said, why are you referring to Nikki Haley by her first name, which is Narada?
Narada,
Yeah, instead of Nikki. And he...
Well, to me, I just love that they're pitting the two Indian Americans against each other.
I know.
Right.
Right. And I like what he said, though. He said, I don't question her faith. I question her authenticity. And he said, I don't have a woman problem because she had accused him.
Yes. Of being anti-women or having a women problem.
He said, I have a corruption problem. Now, this is like there was so much booing going on here, which I'm like, I agree with him. And then he said, I reject the use of identity politics in this party. And I thought that was great.
Amen.
And since the question really was to Vivek, but about Nikki Haley, they went to her for a response.
Yeah.
And this was strong. I don't know if it was strong on the radio, but she refused to respond.
Yeah. Nikki, would you like to respond to this? No. Yeah, to me, that's a good answer.
She said it wasn't a good use of her time.
Yeah,
but it was. I thought it was a strong answer.
But he was going after her about corruption, and he had some strong points about her corruption. And I think I don't think she can answer that question. So that's an easy out.
Yeah, and that got a lot of cheers. Her refusing to respond got so many cheers. So, all right, then we went on another break, and we came back to college campuses. And we're just going to do a summary on this section. So they really were talking about how do you, like a general question, and they started with Nikki Haley, was how do you balance free speech and versus harassment? And they were talking about all of these, are they riots, peaceful protests? I don't know anymore. On college campuses against Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Do you want to share Nikki's answer?
Yeah. So she was, she said it was disgusting and get foreign monies out of the universities. Well, Nikki, they love foreign money. Universities love foreign money because these students pay full fare. Yeah. They don't have any subsidies on these foreign students. So when the universities tell you that they don't, that they're going to cut down on foreign students, not a chance in hell. Because if you can get somebody paying $70,000 a year versus somebody paying 10, they're going to take the 70 on that. So nice try.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. The crowd really liked her answer. She said, America's acting like it's September 10th, and we need to remember September 12th and get all foreign infiltration out of our country. And she had this laundry list that she just rattled off, and the crowd loved the answer.
Yeah. But DeSantis kind of went after her too, though, about how she was cozy with the Chinese in South Carolina when she was governor and whatnot before. So
yes, but he was asked in the same section. It was less about the college campuses and more on foreign policy. He was asked, if China invades Taiwan, would you send American troops? So this was the second time he was asked if you would send American troops. And he said, and this was a weak answer. It was, we will deter that from happening. Yeah. That's all he said. I think it was weak.
It is, but this is one of those gotcha questions because you cannot say, yes, we're going to send troops into Taiwan. You have to say all options are on the table. Diplomacy, military force, anything is on the table. And
Vivek said that he would absolutely defend Taiwan.
Yeah. Well, Vivek's a little bit out there.
But he made a point of saying, we need to get India on our side. We need to get, and so anyway, I thought it was a little weak for DeSantis. And even
but I like Nikki, to win in Taiwan, we have to first defeat Russia in Ukraine.
I know.
Of course, Nikki wants to go full ass into Ukraine.
Of course she does. Yes. And even Christie said he would use the military to defend Taiwan. So, all right. Then we went on to Obamacare. Is there an alternative? And they started with DeSantis because the question was, why should Americans trust you when Floridians have the most uninsured people?
Yeah.
And would you like to give
Well, he didn't expand Obamacare, so he didn't take more money from the federal government.
Right.
We need transparency. Went on blah 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 about big insurance. I thought it was a weak answer,
And I did too.
And I don't think there is
Yeah.
a good answer that anybody's come up with,
Yes.
unfortunately, because what's the cure for our healthcare system? Right?
Yeah, and then Vivek was very interesting. He called out his wife, who was in the audience, saying she's a badass surgeon, and that she doesn't get paid for every procedure, but she always does them to do the right thing. And again, this is one of his lines, but this is what makes Vivek stand out from the others. Even if he's pulling the line from a stump speech, he makes it sound fresh every time.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and I've heard him say this
Good
before.
speaker.
Yeah, we don't have a healthcare system. We have a sick care system. He is 100% right.
Yeah.
And that was the first applause of the night for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
Finally, no booing underneath it. So, yeah.
Although I don't think that his wife liked being called out. She did.
Well, I couldn't see her, so.
Yeah, the camera panned to her, and she seemed, and maybe, like you said before we hit record, maybe she just doesn't like the spotlight, but she seemed very uncomfortable.
Okay.
Yeah. Then, since Vivek had jumped in there, they went after him and talked about, should Trump be proud of Operation Warp Speed, the vaccine injuries? And would you like to give Vivek's response?
Well, he actually went back to Reagan, and he said that Reagan actually was the one that allowed vaccine manufacturers to not be sued.
That was fascinating.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I haven't looked that up, but I'm going to trust what he said on that.
I don't think he would make something like that up.
But he I actually like what he went in afterward. What he went in a little bit after. He said free speech is is most important during times of emergency.
Yeah.
Amen. Because what did we have during COVID? You couldn't quote the CDC website.
I know.
Or it was hate speech or misinformation or whatever, right? Yeah. So
it was crazy. And he said capitalism and government need a divorce.
Yeah, it was a good line.
Which was this very subtle but direct attack on Nikki Haley, without a doubt. And DeSantis came in strong. We need a reckoning for what the government did with the COVID vaccine. And he got lots of applause, lots of cheers, which doesn't surprise me given the audience. Then they took their last break of the night and they came back. And this was so interesting. Which former president, this was a way for them to, this was the pre-close before the final close. So which former president do you derive inspiration from and why? Well, Christie.
He stole Reagan.
Yes,
yeah.
but
everybody, I'm sure, wanted to say Reagan.
But tell us what he talked about himself.
Well, he said he spent time writing a book about Reagan.
Yeah, that's coming out soon.
Yes.
Which made me think that's why he's doing the debates.
Right. He was a slave to the truth, he said,
Yes.
Yeah. And I love how the left now holds up Reagan as this icon when they hated him more than Hitler at the time.
Yeah. And then Nikki Haley, you couldn't see it on the radio, but it was almost like that was going to be her answer.
Yeah.
And so she said George Washington. She might have even said Lincoln too, but she stuck with George Washington, his ability to lead. And then she brought in the whole apple tree. I mean, it was weird.
Yeah. It was weak. It was like a first grader, who's your favorite president? George Washington. He cut down a cherry tree. He didn't lie.
And I think Ron DeSantis gave the most interesting answer.
I thought it was too. Calvin Coolidge.
Silent cow.
Yeah. He said he got almost everything right. And Calvin Coolidge understood the role of the federal government. Amen to that, because that is one of the things, probably the biggest thing that we need to get under control in the next administration.
Was Coolidge in office 8 years or 4?
I do not know.
Oh, okay. That was honest. And then Vivek said Thomas Jefferson, which he had alluded to earlier. And he said, he was we're pioneers as Americans, we're explorers. And that Thomas Jefferson, really believed in freedom of speech. And Vivek, to his credit, says he's a free speech absolutist. That's what he calls himself. And then he pointed out, and this was kind of a good moment, and was, maybe something he should have done earlier, that the swivel chair that the moderators were sitting in was invented by Thomas Jefferson.
Yes.
And they all were
while they were working on the Constitution, because they were in this big room and they wanted it to switch back and forth. And fascinating story.
I thought it was too. I thought it was really good. I
agree.
Then they went to closing statements. And
of course, Christie goes after Trump.
Well, he made a good point.
Okay.
And I'll expand on it. He said Trump will not be able to vote on election day, and everybody booed. And he looked right at the camera and at the audience. He said, "You can boo, whatever, but if we deny the truth, we're going to have 4 more years of Joe Biden." And I appreciated him saying that, because I feel like begging, like I feel like getting on my hands and knees and begging all the MAGA people. There are other choices. There are better choices. And as of right now, none of these 4 candidates look like they're going to be in jail. So we have better choices on the GOP side. There are better choices on the other side too.
Yeah, and that's the whole reason why we're doing this. Well, we've gone into each debate and reviewed everything. Is because there has to be a plan B, folks.
Yes, there has to be. So I, and Christie knows he's not going to be it, but his job, I think, especially at this debate, was to hold people accountable and to speak the truth. And he did, except for that one time. And I know you liked Vivek's response.
I loved Vivek's response. He went right into climate change, which is my biggest pet peeve of all time. And he said it is a hoax. It has nothing to do with the climate. It's a substitute for modern religion. And I was literally cheering as the crowd was.
The crowd, yes. Yeah. So you could hear the crowd.
Somebody's finally standing up and saying, stop this crap.
Yeah. Nikki Haley, our country's in chaos. She rattled off every single issue and said Trump gives us Republican chaos. And she said, if you elect her, there's no drama, no vendettas, and no whining. It was like she came back at the very end, because she was strong at the end, and that got lots of cheers, no question.
Yeah. To me, it was just the laundry list of everything that's wrong or whatever, and that's fine.
Yes, but Nikki, if you ever do a podcast, no drama, no vendettas, and no whining. Yeah. It's good little,
it is.
I'll let you talk about DeSantis. I don't think it was his strongest moment of the night, even though it was very practical.
Well, I think he said at the end of this administration, we're going to leave an America that's less prosperous than it was before. And we need to win again as a party. We need leadership. And, again, he brings in this Florida thing as usual. But, he has been a good leader. No question about that. So I think it was, maybe subtle jab at Trump possibly in there. But, nothing like Christie or Nikki Haley went after him.
No, well, yeah. And Nikki Haley really didn't go after him until the end. So yeah. So that's it, folks. And the really scary part is this may not be the last debate.
Yeah, I think CNN said they've signed up to do 2 debates.
Big but.
Yes, the RNC will not sanction the debates, which anybody out there listening doesn't care what the RNC says.
I know.
So, yeah.
I have to tell you, though, I cringed when I heard there might be 2 more of these things.
Yeah.
I really did.
I'm okay with it if they're down to 3 people or down to 2 people. That would be fine. But Christie's got to get off the stage.
Fucking show up.
Well, he's not going to. It's smart.
We cannot have. I can't imagine an election where the candidates have never debated each other in a cycle. We may have an election because Biden's not going to debate, and Trump is not going to debate.
Yeah.
If
there are no other debates, this may be the last debate of the entire election season.
Yes.
And it's kind of odd.
We
live in strange times. Yes.
Wake the fuck up, people. Wake the fuck up. Edward didn't know I was going to do this.
Potty mouth.
I am begging you on the Republican side. I'm independent. I have no idea how I'm going to vote yet, but I am begging you, MAGA people, please realize he's probably going to be in jail. And yes, it may not be fair or right or whatever, but you have to pick a candidate who can actually win. Christie was right about that. You have to pick a candidate who can win. And Biden on the other side, as a former Democrat, independent turned Democrat turned independent again. Come on. There are better options on that side. I mean, I don't like Newsom, but at least his faculties are together. I mean, he lies like every other word out of his mouth, but there are alternatives. I'm just begging people, what more can I do?
Duly noted.
Yes. Okay, I'll stop. All right. Now we have our favorite segment.
The Week in Woke.
Yes,
And Andrea has not seen any of these. So
yes.
I got 3 items to like to highlight today for
3.
everybody here.
Oh,
Just
good
real
God.
quickies. First is Arizona governor. Yeah, like she really won the election. Katie Hobbs. She sent an invoice to the federal government for $500 million to pay for the cost of illegal immigrants in their state. Yeah. You know, I'm sorry, but your party, the Democrats, only encourage illegals. So don't come crying to the rest of us to pay for it.
Fair
Sorry.
enough.
So, you know, and on a side note, it's estimated now that the illegals who have already come here that Biden has let in and shipped all around our country will cost us up to $500 billion. That's $500 billion to transport, to care for, to educate. Do you think we should have spent the $8 to $10 billion to build a wall?
Yes.
Yeah, it would have been a pretty good investment. All right.
Okay.
Number 2, let's go to your former state, California.
Oh boy.
So California had a $97 billion surplus last year. It was just announced Friday. They now have a $68 billion deficit.
God,
How is this even possible, right? It's the largest deficit in California history.
Oh my God.
You know, they've lost over 400,000 people in 1 year, taxpayers, high income taxpayers. So they're wondering where cash is gone.
Right.
Now, they do have $24 billion in a cash reserve fund, but that cash actually came from COVID money from the feds. You know, that's over now. They're not getting any more COVID money. And they took that COVID money and they spent it shoring up the pension funds around the state instead of actually doing anything with COVID. So what they're going to do is they're going to tap into those cash reserves and they're going to reduce spending on schools and community colleges. That's a recipe for success, isn't it?
Oh,
right. So spend all your cash and really cut back on education. What a great idea. Yeah, I wonder why California's in such a mess.
You know, I didn't leave California because of the politics, but man, I left at the right time. I did.
You did. And let's finish it up. Finally, congratulations to the city of Houston, Texas.
Okay, why?
Well, they just had a mayoral race. It's not easy to say.
Runoff.
It was a runoff, yes, yesterday on Saturday between U.S. Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and a Texas State Senator, John Whitmire. And Whitmire beat Sheila Jackson Lee by 30 points. Now, Lee has been in Congress for 30 years. She is a vile race-baiting charlatan. She is
strong words from you.
That's as nice as I could say about her. And I just thrills me that the voters in Houston, you know, didn't fall for the race baiting because the guy that beat her is an old white guy. Oh my goodness. There's got to be some sort of shenanigans. However, unfortunately, the election was Saturday. She has until tomorrow, Monday, to file to run for her seat again in Congress. And
you mean today when this
when this airs? Yes, Monday to run for her seat in Congress again. And she'll probably win again because her constituents are brain dead. Yes, you are brain dead. Re-electing
so you
this
brought
woman.
it.
Oh yeah,
This Week in Woke. 3.
Amen. So.
Wow, and one was positive.
Yeah, maybe. I guess
the race.
Well, yeah.
That was positive.
Not that she's probably going to be back in Congress. That's the downer. But
yeah. Again, if people are voting for her, then they are voting for her.
Thank you for letting me rant.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that.
And I want to shout out to one of our listeners because I think she really. Oh gosh, I'm at a loss for words. That never happens. Epitomizes maybe who I think our listeners may be. So please let us know on all the socials and everything. But she loves listening to our podcast. Now I need to get this person to write a review. But Zena loves listening to our podcast because she said it's like Cliff Notes politics for her. And she really likes our rapport. So thank you.
Thank you, Zena.
And also, she and her husband come from very different backgrounds, have different political views. And so she just really appreciated seeing and hearing another couple that have a great relationship, but may not agree on politics at all.
Right.
Yeah. So it's possible. So thank you so much. We will be back live next Sunday on camera because this is an audio only episode. So again, please join us live most Sundays, next Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you're listening to the podcast when it comes out, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast, available wherever you're listening right now. And we are going to have that locals community. My goal is to get it up by the end of the year. And you can learn more, follow us, reach out, email. Heck, you can even leave us a voicemail if you go to myfavoriteconservative.show. That's myfavoriteconservative.show.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.